Welcome to the Growth Now movement. I'm your host, Justin Shank. I'm an entrepreneur, speaker, and podcaster who years ago decided to go on a journey on how to grow in all areas of my life. What I found out was it's really a matter of focusing on the 4 pillars of life: business, relationships, spirituality, and wellness. And that's what we do here. We explore how to continuously grow in those areas, all while having a ton of fun doing it. I'm really excited you're on this journey with me. Now let's get to this week's episode. This week, I sit down with Angus Nelson. Angus is an executive men's performance coach. He advises high-achieving men through his conscious design lifestyle coaching to create the transformational results they want in life. He's also a keynote speaker who's worked with over 200 executives from 74 different Fortune 500 companies. He's spoken at the headquarters of Walmart, Coca-Cola, BMW, Whole Foods, Adobe, and so many more. And he's just a really good guy. I actually was able to share the stage with him a couple years back at an event, and we really hit it off. And finally, we were able to lock down a date to do this interview. And guys, I think you guys are really going to love it. Like I said, he works with achieving men in life and helping them break through those barriers they may have in their relationships, in their business, and so much more. And he uses something called the manhood matrix, which is just such a great way to approach it. Now, if you're a lady listening to this right now, this is for you as well. We don't only talk about tactics for men, we talk about life tactics. And we also talk about how if you are a woman who's a high achiever and you're with a high achieving man, how do you approach conversation with them? So definitely make sure you check out this episode. You guys are going to absolutely love it. Now, before we get there, I want to remind you guys that Growth Now Summit Live is happening May 13th through 15th, 2022, and it is going to be a life-changing experience. Keynote speakers from all over the world, amazing human beings coming together to connect, to learn, to grow, and I want you there. So head over to growthnowsummit.com, grab your tickets. Prices are going up soon. So head over there now, growthnowsummit.com, and join us at the summit live in person. Cannot wait to connect with you. See you guys there. Now, without further ado, let's get to the episode with Angus Nelson. Angus, welcome to the show, man.
Great to be here, Justin. It's been forever. We've been talking. We've been crossing paths in the social sphere, but now here we are finally.
And it's funny because when we connected last week we connected and just had a chat, and I was like, dude, I've wanted you on the show forever, but as the world turns, things get crazy, right? And I had people reach out and other people pitching to be on my show and me reaching out to others. And then I kept seeing your content on Instagram and I was like, this guy, I got to get him on. So I reached out. And then you came up in a conversation with Karen and I was like, he's got to come on. So I reached out and I'm glad we're finally here because a lot of what you talk about, and you work with a lot of men who are high performers and individuals who are really trying to get out of their own way, for lack of a better term, because we all get in our own way. And I do very similar things. And I'm like, let's just have a deep conversation of what does that mean? All that stuff. But before we get into that, who's Angus today? Let's talk about that. And then we'll unwind how you got there.
Who is Angus today? Angus is someone who's been broken and humbled by his getting in his own way. I'm now in a place where I'm married. I have 3 kids. My background is that I had a practice marriage that I failed up miserably, and we could get into all of that through my own, first entrepreneurial endeavor that led to addiction of porn, alcohol, and then sleeping around, in which case, obviously, I blew up my marriage, blew up the business, and blew up my self-worth. That was the story that kind of started my path of opening up to who is Angus supposed to be? Who do I need to be in order to do what I see in my heart to achieve? And so now having a marriage with these 3 beautiful kids, my oldest of which is a product of my wife's practice marriage. And then we had 2 more. It's I've had to earn the right to be a dad with the oldest. And then these other 2 is how can I do this and be really intentional and try and give my kids all the tools I possibly can to equip them to succeed in life and not make some of the mistakes, that I made. Obviously, I want them to make some of their own mistakes. So that's one piece. The other part of who I am today is I'm a safe place for men in marriages to know that you're not alone. Whatever you're going through, whatever you've been finding yourself in, the questions that you ask, know that you're not alone. somewhere someone has gone through some of the similar things and come out the other end in more amazing and strong ways. And wherever you find yourself, know that today does not dictate your tomorrow.
Mm. I love that, man. Let's talk a little bit about that first part. And you know, we're going to get into that second part of what you do, but you know, you talk about the practice marriage, you talk about, you know, falling in love with a woman who has a kid. You and I talked about that, playing the bonus dad role,
Yep.
Is very interesting, and it's a journey in itself. And then kind of going through that, you know, there's a saying that people say all the time, which is once a cheater, always a cheater. You're obviously the poster child for it. That's not true, right? We are able to change. We are able to shift. What was it in your life? Was it that rock bottom moment, or was it an intentional path to, I need to overcome? What was that all about for you in that shift?
The biggest piece I can tell you is identity. At the end of the day, so much of how we see ourselves is how we show up in the world. And when I went through my first, divorce, it was the product of not being faithful. And I had somebody at a bar once tell me, because I was a big flirt, and this was my thing, was I always wanted a woman's attention and their accolades, their validation, because on some level I didn't feel like I had it in myself. So I needed some external, support.
Sure.
Well, I'm in this bar and I'm doing my thing, and I've already been divorced, and these people know my story, and they probably even knew my ex. And it's like, dude, you're such a man whore. And it was as if I saw myself on a Miss America or Miss Universe pageant walking across the stage with this sash across my chest that said man whore. And I just accepted it. It's like, yep, that's me then. Okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm a man whore.
Wow.
And I made a shift when my identity started to change. And I started to see that the cycles that I was on, the kinds of habits that I was creating in my life were a product of how I saw me. So my yearning for pornography was a sense of control, because in that moment I can see whatever I want to see. And I can, if I don't like it, I can click to something else. And then I can get off and have my sense of, relief or power or control. And then I just move on with my life. That doesn't work in the real world. It's absolute fantasy and virtual. And so here I was coping with this sense of control, because in my real life, I didn't have control. So that was the first, like, kind of a aha moment, like, oh my God, this thing is controlling me and I'm allowing it to, right? And then the second piece was, I want to get off this train because this chaos is not fun. Like, how do I get out of this chaos?
Yeah.
So when I went to counseling, this book that that my counselor had first given me was talking about how every man seeks three things. They seek a battle to win, a princess to defend, and a battle to fight, a cause to win, and a princess to rescue. And I'm like, I don't know that I've ever thought about having a princess to rescue.
Yeah.
I just thought the woman was the battle I was supposed to win. Like, I need to conquer the woman. And so it was a very super hyper masculine perspective, was that women were something to be conquered. And so I made this shift. Like, what if I was to provide a greenhouse, a culture, a cultivation for a woman to flourish in the same way that I was starting to experience this in myself? And so when I got married the second time, years later, I started making these massive shifts in how I saw myself, which caused me to grow more comfortable in my own skin, more confident of myself as a man. Some of the business stuff I was doing wasn't necessarily always working, but I knew that it never dictated who I was. I never allowed the work to be my validation, or my self-worth. What I saw myself was growing more and more confident in myself and getting to this place where I had nothing to gain, nothing to prove, and nothing to lose. And so now that I don't need this external validation, what if I could provide that same level environment for a woman? And so for my wife, I've always tried to get to this place where I felt like I was being safe, that I felt like she felt understood, that I felt like she knew that I saw her, that I was paying attention.
Yeah.
And these became some of the power pieces in our relationship, that I wasn't coming from this place of domination or this place um, of oppressive power. Instead, I was coming from this place of generosity power, where I've come to serve you, to love you, and let you know I'm here. And that's been a massive change in the experience I have in this marriage versus my first.
Yeah, I mean, and that's huge, right? To identify it and then make the shift, right? I think a lot of time as men, we have a hard time admitting that we're flawed, or admitting that we are the ones in our own way. And you actually posted something on Instagram. This is proof that I watch your Instagram. You actually recently posted something on Instagram about high performers, high achievers, people who are successful in business and many other places from the outside world. They're the ones who get in their own way.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about that. Talk about, how do we first identify that we're the reason that we're having issues? And second, what are some of the first steps we can take to really start to kind of clear out the BS and move forward?
So the first part of your question, first of all, we all get in our own way, high performer or not. It's just to the degree that we do. So
Yeah.
high performers, some of my observation is we're high capacity, high capability. And so those of you who on the Enneagram, typically you can look at ones, threes, and eights as, that kind of context. A lot of times they're either going to be a leader, manager, entrepreneur, founder, give it whatever label you want. There's somebody who's definitely like kicking ass and taking names. Let's do this, right? What happened was is we start to build this environment around ourselves where A, we're always in command, we're always barking orders. Two, or B, I forget what I just said. The second, I just had a Home Alone flashback. So there's this other piece where it's like we become our own bottleneck, because we are the source of answers. Everyone that has a question has to come to me. I'm the one who's making things happen. So you're highly dependent on my authority. And that becomes miserable. And so that's one way we get in our own way. The second piece is we build kingdoms that we're afraid will fall. So what happens, because we're so highly capable, we'll see some sort of success, and you can define that how you want. And we think that if we get to this next risk, that we might potentially lose what we've already built. And this is a weird nuance. And I can't tell you at what stage this happens for a man or a woman, but I'm a men's coach, so I'll speak mostly to men. They get to this point where about 35, to 50, they've built some momentum, and then they hit a ceiling. They hit a plateau. They hit something where the things that used to work no longer work. And they're afraid to try something different or new because of what they might lose. But here's what we know. Risk is what got you here. Risk is what makes you feel alive. And so when you stop taking risk, you actually stop living, because it's the way you're wired. The problem is you might be taking the wrong risks, and defining that for each person can be differently. But the saying is always true, that the safest thing you can do is take risk, and the riskiest thing you can do is stay safe. Because the company you're at will eventually give you a pink slip and push you out. Yeah. The things that you've built will eventually need other expertise. And if you're smart, you'll surround yourself who are smarter, brighter, and cooler than you. And this is an ego thing, because you're so used to being the guy. When you can finally stop being the guy and surround yourself with, other people who are far better than you, you'll actually become more of a leader. You'll step in that place of humility, step in that place of being honorable and safe, and you'll fly at 30,000 feet, where you can actually work on the business instead of being stuck in the weeds working in the business. So that's number one. The second part of your question is like, was it how do we get out of it, or how?
Yeah, what are some of the things that some actions we can take to make those shifts?
Yeah. So to get our shift together, see what I did there? Is this dad jokes all day, hashtag. This premise of getting out of your own way takes a massive shift of self-awareness. And what I've observed in high performance is we're so busy trying to win that we forget that other people have emotions and feelings because we've squashed our own. We don't give ourselves even the grace or the permission to feel. We just go. And if something happens, we just rise above it and we'll just keep pushing. And when things get hard, we work harder. Like this is the way we oftentimes will find chaos in our life. And so one is I read this cartoon on one of these business magazines or something like it once, and it said, every one of us need someone outside of our own jar to read our label.
Amen.
Right? You need an outside person who can speak honestly and straight with you, whether that's a mentor, a coach, a spouse, like someone you give permission to like get in your stuff.
Yeah.
Right. And then number two, can I cuss on this show?
Yeah, you're good. Yeah.
So they're going to get in your shit. Right. So then there's this second piece where you have to surround yourself by other people who are willing to get into your shit. Right. And I think that's something that we are starved for is true community, especially as men. We don't really make friends. We have acquaintances that we play fantasy football with. We may have somebody that we're a part of, some kind of a league, bowling, darts, pool, whatever. But high performers, they're not really even involved in that kind of stuff because they're so busy working on their things. And so they show up at events and conferences and they think they know people, but they don't actually have conversations. They just manipulate connections for their next greater win.
Yeah.
And so this is where vulnerability and transparency must be given place to where we can sit down and actually say like, dude, I'm struggling. Dude, I am buried and I don't know how to get out. Like these kinds of things where we allow ourselves to stay there long enough and we'll start coping and we'll be finding ourselves in porn or alcohol or drugs or, like weird things. And the longer we stay there, the darker those things get. And what we don't understand is those are a product of our subconscious. And this takes us back to the identity. How do I see me? On some level, many high performers do what they do because they're starving for some kind of validation outside themselves.
Yeah.
And they can't take their foot off the gas because on some level they feel like they won't be enough. And so I say it comes down to three things: what you're worth, what you deserve, or do I have what it takes? So the worth is, am I worthy of this great accolade, this great business, this great income, this great house, this great marriage? Because if I don't believe that, I'll find ways to sabotage it. I'll find ways to pollute it. Do I deserve? I'm making more money than my dad ever made. I don't know how I feel about that. How come I feel like I've made so much progress and success, but like my friends from high school or my friends from church, my friends from the league, like they're not experiencing the same? Like, do I even deserve this? Or there's people in the world who don't have anything. And here I am complaining about do I deserve this? And then the last piece is, do I have what it takes? It's like, I know I have what it takes to get to the levels I've accomplished, but do I have what it takes to go to these other levels, to be vulnerable, to be transparent, or these other levels of success? Like your intuition is calling you to go to that next space and you're scared spitless that you'll lose what you already built. And so you won't allow yourself to go the other place. And what I mean by that is it's actually we'll get on some psychology here. Your subconscious is saying, this is outside of what we know.
Right.
And therefore it's scary. So let's push you back into the box so at least you can stay where you know. And we can go, that's a whole nother conversation.
No, and I love what you said there. And it's so funny to think about, when we met, both you and I were in different places. In particular, I mean, for me, my whole life was different. Everything's different for me, but, in particular business. But as you talk about these progressions of, the self-worth and all these things, like and then trying to overcompensate to prove a point. And I've done all of these things. Like, it literally was my natural progression. Like, I wanted to start this podcast because I wanted to prove people wrong. That said, you can't be. And I was like, no, I can be. And obviously yeah, right. Look at me. And that was the original idea behind the podcast. And it took a rock bottom moment for me to shift out of that, and why the podcast took on the life that it did. And then, as my business grows, I still hit those moments of like, am I deserving of this? Can I do this? Like, every step along the way. But again, surrounding yourself with the right people and making sure you have the right mentors and friends who are willing to get into your shit and read your labels and say, look, this is where you have to shift. Yes, you can do this, but here's what you have to do first. And I think that's a lot of the piece that, in particular, again, men miss as we're trying to evolve. I'm reading your little microphone thing, as we try and evolve, is we have that hard time to get out of our own way to say, hey, I need help, or I need support, or I need a coach, or I need a mentor, or whatever. And so what do you notice as you go through this and you start to approach these men who you might notice like, hey, I can help you, but they don't quite notice it? Like, how do you handle that conversation? I think this is important because I do have a larger audience of women who listen to my show. Probably about 60 to 70% are women. But what about women who are with a man who isn't seeing that? How can you approach that conversation and say, hey, look, like, open your eyes a little bit?
All right, ladies, gather around. Here we go. So there's a couple things. Like, there's a big thing about narcissism. And I even mentioned about myself that we see a lot of men and we say, oh, they're narcissists. I'm married to a narcissist. I do things with a narcissist. And I think there are some things about high performers that get a bad rap in the context that they get accused of being a narcissist. And I think they have narcissistic qualities when they're in performance mode. Right. But that does not necessarily make them a full-blown narcissist. And what I mean by that is sometimes we don't know what we don't know. And when you have someone close to you, like a spouse or like a girlfriend, the dynamics of your influence changes because you're closer to the sphere of influence. Outside people could say something and they could blow it off and like, oh, you're full of crap, whatever. But if someone that they love says something similar, they have to take pause. When I have a child and my child is like, Dad, you haven't looked up from your laptop in 3 hours. When are we going to play this game you said we were going to play? I'm like, oh, I made a big mistake. I keep saying, and we're going to do this, and then I'm not doing it. Someone that you love has the power to call you on your shit a lot better than someone on the outside. So that's number one, giving yourself permission to be really honest with your spouse and saying, this is how this makes me feel. Okay. Now understand this. This is different than you're always like this.
Yeah.
Two different conversations.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you do this, it makes me feel, that's the language you want to use. It makes me feel small. It makes me feel unloved. It makes me feel ignored. It makes me feel like you have other priorities than us. Those are conversation pieces that are a lot harder to like ignore for a high performer. So then what they do is they typically go to some kind of panic mode, like, what else do you want me to do? I'm trying to do all the things. Because in their mind, all the things are the things bringing them validation. And what they don't understand is like the quality and caliber of love and peace and joy in your home is actually the foundation for the greater things you could possibly do in your business. They think in that moment, I'm doing all the things in the business so I can experience the quality and caliber of love and peace at home. And so it's kind of a pain and pleasure confusion.
Yeah.
If I have hard conversations and we deal with this emotional stuff, that feels painful and yucky. Instead, I'll go focus on business because there I know I can win. Versus, and the other side of that is they'll get no pleasure.
Right.
Or it's only going to be more pain, right? But on the front, it looks pleasurable. Reverse engineer that and say, well, if I do the thing that feels painful, let me go have some honest conversations. Let me make some changes. Let me reprioritize and focus on my family. Now on the back end, suddenly I experience pleasure. But it's because I persevered through that, what perceived on the front as being painful. So this is a couple things for you ladies at home. So first thing is giving yourself permission to have the honest conversation. Number two is position it from how it makes you feel, right? And you can even say when your daughter does this, it makes her feel, you can even speak third person about other people in the family. And then this third piece is understanding that your ability to know your man gives you insight into how to like if you really observe him, you can position conversations a lot more acutely and meaningfully that are outside of their performance. And what I mean by that is the thing that makes them like freak out and do a little, like they just weird out is something that makes them feel less than. If you're giving them one more thing to do, they feel trapped. And you always want to position it from a place of opportunity that if we make these decisions, something else is made possible. And for whatever reason, this works for a dude. Like, in other words, if we took a vacation, let's take a 4-day vacation. They'll say, you understand, I have all these things going on. Now, if there's a launch or something, I get that. But just in general, they're just, there's always something important. There's always a house burning in their world.
Yeah. Yep.
But if instead you can say, hey, what if we took a break from this so that you could regroup and clear your head so you could come back and give that more of your attention? Suddenly like, well, that kind of makes sense. Like you have to see it from, kind of how they're structured. And you would say, well, why do I have to do it from there? Whatever. I would tell you two things. One is position something else is you get to do this because you love them enough to help them get out of their own way. And then number two is they can't know what they don't know until somebody loves them enough to show it to them in a way that's full of grace. And so this is where women have this amazing magical power. My wife has gotten really good at it, is to like position things from these things that make me say, all right, that actually makes sense. And these are the three pieces I would say in your relationship is that are going to like bring about actual like attention to the conversation.
Yeah. Dude, I love that. And guys, if you're hearing this to take, you just spoke to the women. Guys, if you're hearing this and you got a little uncomfortable hearing this, he's talking to you. Like there's also a self-assessment too, right? Like as they hear, like, how do you have those? I mean, as you were talking, I was like, how do people have these conversations with themselves? And it's very similar, right? Reframe and refocus and look at things a little bit differently. Like I love that approach, man. And it's super, super smart. So I want to talk a little bit about these high performers and you in particular, right? Seeing your growth over the last couple of years and seeing the lives you're changing and doing all the things that you're doing. One question I ask every single person, it's a 2-part question. The first thing is, what's your definition of success? And the second part is, what are 3 things you do every single day to ensure that success for yourself?
Great questions. So success, I'll tell you, success to me is being comfortable in my own skin. I like to think that I'm successful every day. I am not trying to get something to be successful anymore. The things that I get or the things that I do, the things I achieve now, in my perspective, are an expression of the success I'm already experiencing. Once I went through all the things I went through, and it wasn't like a night and day thing. Like this has been a very progressive thing. I've been trying to be a coach for like a decade now. It was me dying to myself and getting to this place of, that alignment that I shared with you before, that manhood matrix, like that alignment of understanding how I see the world helps me to show up in ways that are more powerful for those around me. and I'm no longer doing what I'm doing for me. I'm doing it from a place, and this is a really interesting paradox. I'm not doing it for other people either, right? So I'm not self-sacrificial. I'm not falling on anyone's sword. It's not my responsibility to give my life for other people, like some would say. My philosophy is I'm living my life to inspire others that what I'm living is possible. I want to model for other people a lifestyle that they perhaps have not seen before. And if they are curious as to how to do it themselves, I have some answers. I'll show you the way. But I don't want to be a guru, a teacher, the guy that knows all the things.
Yeah.
I want to be perceived as someone who is making these things tangible. Like, I don't want them to look to me and say, one day I want to be like Angus. I want them to see in me something about themselves and say, holy shit, if that's possible for him, that's possible for me too. So for me, success is living in that way where I walk into a room with nothing to gain, nothing to prove, and nothing to lose. And now all of a sudden, the quality of conversations and opportunities and experience I have are being attracted because of the high caliber of the perception I have of myself. And I'll establish this before I'll answer the second part of this question. Your brain always seeks equilibrium. It wants to validate how you see you 24/7. And so if you have perceptions about yourself and how you see yourself, your brain will go into equilibrium mode, want to validate. And so it will attract or create the opportunities, relationships, and conversations that will then validate how you see you. So if you're feeling junky about yourself, so let's go back to my old story, and I'm in that place of control, I'm attracting more and more opportunities, conversations, and experiences that make me feel out of control. There's the paradox. My expression is that I don't have control, so I will create more things that make me feel out of control. If I feel unloved and I don't love myself, follow the line of that continuum. If I don't love me, why should anyone else love me? For that matter, why should even God, the universe, universal intelligence even love me? So now I will attract and create the kinds of opportunities that continually make me feel unloved. And I'll be dating girls who do the exact same things to make me feel miserable. They just have a different face. I'll take jobs that help me get fired over and over again, or make me feel small, or make me feel inferior over and over again, because that's how I see me. So it's about doing the inner work that actually becomes that advantage for your life. You do the inner work, you change this vision and sight you have for yourself. Your brain goes into equilibrium. We want to validate this. So now you start attracting different kinds of opportunities, different kinds of conversations, different kinds of experiences that now elevate you to a new reality. And then the key is you need to normalize that and treat it as normal, not special. Because this is what we said before, is your subconscious is like, are you sure is this real? Am I worthy? Do I deserve? Do I have what it takes? And then you'll have the opportunity to go back to that old belief system, or you just reinforce it. It's like, yeah, this is who I am.
Right.
Then continue to feed yourself what's the next level of how you see you. Right. So my daily success, now to answer the second part of your question, is to perpetuate the belief in myself on that context. Is every day I have what I call a morning manifest, which is me spending time with me, how I see me. It's a like 6-page little workbook I use for all my clients, but I have one for myself. I've also recorded it in audio and add like this like theatrical music behind it. So I get done, I feel like freaking Rocky when I'm done.
Love it.
But it speaks to the first thing is the manifest. I call it the morning manifest. That manifest is a story about me. I love me. I'm proud of me. Like those kinds of things. Number 2, it also talks about like the kind of house I live in, the kind of things that I do, and how I serve people. The second piece is a vision board. how I see this next level self. The third piece is my routines, what I practice on a daily basis. The third piece is my principles for living or my worldview. They're like quotes from like Marcus Aurelius or Preston Eli, who said, "There's nobody greater than me. They just think something I'm not thinking, doing something I'm not doing, or believing something I'm not believing. And all of these things I can change."
Love it.
Those kinds of quotes. And then the last piece is affirmations. And the affirmations, I combine a truth with an emotion. I attract the best clients at all times, and I feel inspired by them. This makes me feel confident, smart, and influential or impactful. So that's just an example, right? And so on a daily basis, I want to rehearse, close my eyes, and feel who I am showing up in my day. And then I open my eyes and I just manifest it.
I love it, man. And so we're coming close to the end of our time together, and I always wrap up with the same question. But before we get there, you had mentioned the manhood matrix. How do people get a hold of what this is? Because clearly it is a great guide to finding the clarity that we all need to reach the next level in our life.
Sure. Well, thanks for asking. So you can go to manhoodmatrix.co, C-O, and you can download it for free. And what it is a PDF, and it takes you through the manhood matrix, which is this alignment tool. And I'll tell you real quick what it is. When you understand how we are designed, Maslow's pyramid that was designed was this whole thing about self-actualization, that our selfish quest is always for self-actualization, whether that be spiritual or natural or whatever. The things that we pursue are to meet these needs. In so doing, I kind of broke down into what does that actually look like, especially for us high performers. So the first thing is mindset. Mindset is, how do I see the world? How do I see me? Right? Because your mind is everything, because first you must see, then you can be. So all these things I just kind of established for you is this mindset. Stack on top of that, this attitude. Is the world happening to me, or is the world happening for me? Taking on the attitude that life is always presenting me lessons and wisdom and giving me an advantage for my future. So therefore, life is preparing me for what life is preparing me for, right? Then there's this other context from your attitude and how you're seeing generosity, abundance, and your place in the world. You stack on top of that your nature. Your nature is seeing that your gifts, talents, and skills have a bigger component, that what you do is not for validation. Your nature is internal about who you be, not what you do. Understanding that your nature is never indicative of the things externally to be validated, but it's indicative of how you choose to show up in the world. And so you bring your nature to the world because it's inherent. It's something that belongs to you. It's something internal and can never be taken away. And all you do is build more and more of that momentum, which takes you to this fourth piece, which is humility. Those gifts, talents, and skills have a place to play in the world, where you see that the world is bigger than yourself. You step out of narcissism and selfishness, and you move in this place of contribution, in which now you'll see a place of observation, which is now where you become self-aware. Now you're in this place of emotional intelligence, and you're starting to see how your actions and behavior impact those around you. And this is what leadership is lacking right now. We're lacking self-awareness in our leadership, because we think self-awareness is not hurting people's feelings. No, that's political correctness. Self-awareness is when you say what needs to be said in a way the other person can receive it, where they can feel safe, supported, understood, helped. And now you go to this place of seeing opportunity. Your gifts, talents, and skills can bring in something to the world. What's my part to play? Where's my opportunity? In which case you'll finally dare. And your dare is to step out and do the thing that you see in your heart to do. And you may have multiple dares throughout your life. You're not just one purpose. In fact, I would say your purpose in life is actually emotion. The purpose are, what are the two core emotions in your life? I learned this from Mastin Kipp in his book, Claim Your Power. And he said that your core emotions are something you create every day, and they feed you and give you energy when you make it contagious to those around you. So your dare is an expression of that purpose. And now all of a sudden you inspire others that it's possible for them as well. And so this is the line of this continuum. And whenever you like have an issue in your life pop up, you go through this pyramid and say, at what level of my foundation do I see the cracks? And then let me rebuild that portion and then stack on top of it the areas I need to perform better.
I love it, man.
Manhood matrix.
And it's so good. I mean, you went over that with me last week, and I was just like, this is just so good and so true when, and you've really broken down those steps for individuals to be like, okay, what's next for me? What's next? And so, to reiterate, it's manhoodmatrix.co. So guys, make sure you go download that PDF, and that way I'm sure you'll get more information about Angus from there as well. And then follow him on Instagram as well. Angus, what's your Instagram?
AngusNelson.com or .com. Just Angus Nelson. Angus Nelson. Sorry.
No, you're good. At Angus Nelson, or you can go to angusnelson.com because that's there too, right? So check it out, guys, wherever you want. And like I said, I wrap up every single interview with the same question. And that is, in your life, what has been your biggest moment of growth?
Failure. We don't understand that failure is a propellant. Failure is jet fuel. And when you fail, you actually learn the lessons that move you faster. And so if you look through the lines of great people, great men, like they have failures. And what happens, especially if you can iterate fast enough, that's the whole premise of innovation is fail fast, move forward. And so life becomes a lot of experimentation. And the sooner you learn that, the sooner you realize that the less you have to be perfect, the more contagious your leadership becomes. And so you may fail in some areas of life or business or finances or whatever, but that never dictates what's possible for you, because if you learn the lessons, you'll accelerate faster to get back to where you were, because your identity is found in the place you're at in that risk, not in the thing that you lost. So that's why whenever you hear about millionaires, typically a lot of them have gone bankrupt or lost businesses along the way.
Yeah.
And that's how they learn their lessons. And guess what? They became millionaires again. Right?
Yep.
Because that's their identity and they know how to get there fast. So what took them 10, 15 years to get the first time, the next time takes them 3 to 5.
Yeah, it's so true. Dude, I love it. Angus, thank you so much, man, for coming on the show and sharing your wisdom, but also doing what you do to shift the world and teach people how to step into that person who they are, that identity, and everything else in between, man. This has been phenomenal. I'm sure you're going to be on the show again in the future, man. Just thank you so much.
Now, next time you get to be on my show.
Let's do it. I'm game.
I'm bringing back my old podcast, but I'm renaming it to Evolve Men. We're going to launch in September. So
that's exciting, man. That's super exciting. So guys, stay tuned for that as well. But honestly, man, thank you so much for being you. I'm so glad we've reconnected, and I'm excited to see where the friendship goes, but thank you.
My pleasure, Justin.
Thank you guys so much for being a part of the Growth Now movement. This is how you can really help me out. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please share it out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that fun stuff. And let's grow this movement to epic heights. And it's all going to be because of you guys. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.